The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Dylan J. Schlender presiding. We all rise for the Honorable Judge Schlender.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People versus What About Bob. What About Bob is a 1991 comedy about a neurotic psychiatric patient that interjects himself into his egotistical doctor's vacation. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Lou Perez, you are appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Thank you very much. I need to start out by just saying that it is criminal the way that nostalgia is sold to us. And I'm like, well, many of the people I'm sure listening, I'm a 39-year-old man. And
you know our audience so well.
That's right.
Dialed in.
All of them.
I'm a 39-year-old man. I'm a family man. And when I go back into my past, when I go back to rewatch movies that I grew up with, I want to be transported back to the time that I was living in back then. And more than anything, I want to at least capture some glimmer of entertainment that I may have felt back in 1991 when I was 9 years old, before I had even, hair on my balls. I would like to go back there to that time. So what happened? Let's see. I was alone in my apartment. It was late, and there was nothing on TV. Nothing on TV, nothing on streaming. But there was a recommendation that said, calling out to me, "Hey, Lou, what about Bob? What about Bob?" And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, well, wow, what about Bob? We're talking about the 1990s. Bill Murray, one of my favorite comedic actors of all time. Richard Dreyfuss is playing the straight man, and this, you can't go wrong with it. You can't go wrong. Unfortunately, the 9-year-old Lou saw something different in this movie that the adult Lou didn't. Now, it might be that for the past 10 years or so, I've been in therapy, but I left this movie with such a bad taste in my mouth. It took me over 2 sittings to actually watch the damn thing. So I had to pause it, because I'm like, at one point, because I'm like, this isn't funny. And then I had to keep going. And then the second time I'm like, this still isn't funny. And the third time I was just angry that I had sat through what should have been like an hour and a half, but it prolonged itself where it took over 3 days for me to watch the thing. I think that the movie is a sad display of what psychoanalysis is. I think that the movie not only gaslights the main character that Richard Dreyfuss plays, it gaslit the audience into thinking that it was a good movie. It's not funny. Huh? What was that?
Oh, he was just laughing.
The jury laughs. We get to laugh.
There's a lot of gaslighting, jury. People of the jury, all you 39-year-old men of the jury out there. There's a lot of gaslighting. And as we proceed with the trial, I will point to specific instances that are so egregious on every level, not only on the level of personal, spiritual, and whatnot. That's all I got, folks.
All right.
That's my opener.
Well, thank you, Mr. Perez. All right. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Don't Hassle Me. I'm Ryan Luis Rodriguez. Please present your opening statement.
I don't know what that means.
Because of the
we've all
shirt
met-
he's wearing.
Oh, got it. We've all met that person who just begs to be murdered through no fault of your own.
Robb.
Maybe they're decomposing right now in your crawl space. Maybe the cops have been investigating you for months but have been unable to obtain a search warrant. What was I talking about? All right, a movie. As an audience, we are typically expected to receive Bill Murray a certain way because he basically plays the same character in every major role. But in What About Bob, the character of Bob has more nuance and more emotional capacity than any other performance that Murray had given in his first 2 decades on screen. And in Richard Dreyfuss, he has his ultimate screen partner, the logical counterpoint, a vain narcissist with a limitless capacity for impotent rage. Bill Murray characters typically go up against the immovable object, but here he clashes with someone whose pain we feel viscerally without discounting an innate humanity on his part. Bob isn't trying to be the villain, but we can interpret him that way because of how he contrasts with our ostensible protagonist. For a comedy, it's surprisingly complex. This is where the film succeeds greatly, and over the course of 3 concise arguments, I shall prove that What About Bob is not only innocent of being a bad movie, but guilty of being a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Prosecution, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Okay, my first exhibit. Now, I think we need to have an honest discussion when it comes to nuance. Okay, because Bill Murray, while the defense will call his performance a nuanced one, or the character a nuanced performer, I think that's actually, I think the character itself is all over the place. The character is all matters of crazy, whether it's obsessive compulsive, agoraphobic, all over the place. But yet somehow this same human being that is so neurotic that he would go to great lengths as to fake his own death and to pretend to be a police officer who happened upon his own body in order to get the contact information from the psychoanalyst whom he had only seen for maybe 5 minutes. Somehow that same crazy motherfucker happens to be able to win over not only Richard Dreyfuss's family, but a whole town, a whole community. I think that the nuance that we're talking about is a bunch of people saying, "Hey, Bill Murray, we need you to save this thing. So whatever crazy shit you want to do, go ahead and do it. And it's a comedy, so we're going to give you a pass. But I'm not going to give you a pass. The people are not going to give you a pass."
Mr. Rodriguez, would you like to touch on whether or not this performance was nuanced?
Well, I don't think that the performance is nuanced so much as the character is nuanced, because he's also, like the prosecution mentioned, he's not one thing. I think that nuance is something that reveals something to be more than what it actually appears to be. And as for the character being realistic, I don't believe I ever made that assertion. I don't think that any character in the film is particularly realistic, although I think that they all have human moments. But also, we're looking at this through the wrong prism, I think. This is a comedy, and not everything has to be part of some kind of stylistic consistency. I think that we need to accept the fact that things are going to arrive in different places than we probably would have done ourselves, but ultimately, what is in service is the story, and what is in service is the joke, and I think that both are well served.
All right, thank you. Mr. Perez, if you'd like to continue, please.
Sure. Okay, I want to paint this picture for you, okay?
Please do.
You guys are big Hollywood bigwigs, and I'm pitching you this story. And in the first act, we have a deranged psychopath who has tracked down his psychoanalyst, whom, again, he's only seen for 5 minutes earlier, only days before. And he manages to track him down to his house. And the family, meaning the wife, the daughter, and the son, think it would be a really great idea that not only should this maniac stay with them, but that he should share a bedroom with their son, with their, I believe, probably 9 or 10-year-old son. I don't know what scene was cut out, but my mind only goes to depravity, and I have no idea what would have happened had something else happened in that movie. It's insane. It's insane that they would let Bill Murray, this crazy guy, sleep in the same room as the son, and everyone's like, "Oh, but it's fine. It just makes so much sense." Why? Because they're not real characters.
Okay, and would you say this goes to in your opening statement? You were talking about kind of the representation of therapy, the gaslighting of Richard Dreyfuss's character. Would you say that plays into that point?
Oh, I think so. From the get-go, Richard Dreyfuss is treated like he's the crazy one. You know, it's a complete world. The world is, you know, against this guy, basically stacked, or at least the figures in his life are against him. And you know what? I'm looking back at that and I'm saying, you know, there was a time that I would have loved to have had a sleepover with Bill Murray. You know, I would have loved to it as a 9-year-old, but as a 39-year-old man looking back, I know that's a big nuh-uh. That's not right. Now I await Mr. Rodriguez to defend the sharing of a boudoir of a 9-year-old boy and a 40-some-odd-year-old comedic genius.
Well, here's the thing. I don't need to defend that because not everything I need to defend, but to speak to this idea that these characters are not realistic, again, this is a comedy. And as for why Bill Murray's character can appeal to the family, that clearly they see something in him that Richard Dreyfuss's character doesn't, that's because he's a cipher. He represents everything in the family that the individual members think that they're lacking in their relationship with him. And in order for this kind of borderline farce to work, it needs to be completely stacked up in one direction. Basically, Richard Dreyfuss's character in this movie is Job. He's constantly being tested by, I guess if you want to say that Bill Murray is God, then I guess you can do that. But this whole thing of how he eventually begins to become crazy, despite the fact that he's actually the one sane person in this unsensible world, I think that is entirely what the movie is going for. And I think that what you're doing is you're saying that it's effective in what it's setting out to do.
All right, Mr. Perez, if you'd like to respond to that or bring up a new point.
I would not like to respond to that because that was a very strong point that Mr. Rodriguez made. Damn it. It's not. Look, you know what? I think what we're doing right now, we're having a meta narrative right now happening where I'm the sane one and you all are trying to drive me crazy.
I will neither confirm nor deny that I'm trying to drive you crazy.
Well, I would. One thing that I would say when it comes to the refrain that, well, it's a comedy. It's a comedy. It's a comedy. There was nothing funny in it. I didn't laugh. What's going on there? What's happening? And it might be personal, but rewatching it, I did not laugh. It took, like I said, it took me a very long time to get through it. And I think, like, normally Richard Dreyfuss has been, I know he often plays a uptight, you know, kind of penny loafer guy. Is that and then maybe that could be stricken from the court, an uptight penny loafer guy, which is a terrible way to describe anything.
You're going to offend all our 39-year-old penny loafer wearing.
We all have our things, and his is shoes. What are you going to do about it?
I'll have to take it off my dating profile.
But I found him right from the get-go to be such an unsympathetic character, and that's an issue too, where this character is an a-hole from the start, and rather than having some kind of epiphany or a change, Instead, he's sort of the if Bill Murray's God, this guy is Job, and who he just keeps getting hit with some of the worst things that could possibly happen to him.
I would watch that movie.
All right, so Mr. Perez, something you mentioned in your opening too, and you don't have to get too personal if you don't like to, but you mentioned that you were in therapy. So do you think this movie's portrayal of therapy has something to do with whether or not it should be considered good or bad?
Well, I think it's definitely it's taking on the idea of what seems like kind of like pop psychology. So the Richard Dreyfuss character, and at this point, I just think the character's name is Richard Dreyfuss. I don't even.
We can sustain that.
I'm checking IMDb, and it is. It says played by himself. That's strange.
This is originally a one-man show.
What about Dick, the Richard Dreyfuss story?
I was in
Order in my court, please. Please continue.
So I think they're definitely taking on the idea of pop psychology, the self-help books. Sort of read this book and all your problems will go away. I do think that what the Bill Murray character is suffering from, what Bob is suffering from, is something that would need a lot more than just a daily affirmation of baby steps, like for that to be the initial breakthrough that he needs. So I think on that front, I think it definitely fails. Although, you know what, I've been in therapy for, like I said, like 10 years, so maybe that's what I need. Maybe I need some baby steps, and then I can go and make a shit movie.
Could be.
Baby step win an Oscar.
Mr. Rodriguez, would you like to comment on the portrayal of therapy in this movie?
Yeah, so I don't think that this is a necessarily like an anti-psychiatry movie or an anti-psychologist movie, or that it's suggesting a kind of behavioral therapy that is not realistic. I think that what it is a commentary on the industry of psychiatry and how we kind of turn it from this self-help thing into this thing that we can market and exploit. And I think that I don't think that it's anti-therapist. I don't think that it's anti-therapy, but I do think that it is skeptical, and I think a healthy skepticism, and it is agnostic to the process in terms of how these characters interact with one another. I don't think that it's saying, by the way, if you go to therapy, you're an idiot. I think that they're using the preconceived notions of these kind of practices and subtly kind of tweaking the teats, you might say.
No, we might not say that, actually.
Your Honor.
Order in the court. There'll be no tweaking, as it were. All right, Mr. Perez, is there anything else you'd like to bring up today?
The reality is that I'm a 39-year-old man who's not a penny loafer guy, and I will never get that time back in my life that I spent rewatching that. And
Objection! No, I'm kidding.
You can get it back, sir. You can.
Let me sell you my book.
I will say that before I rewatched What About Bob, I rewatched My Blue Heaven, which came out around a similar time.
I believe the same year.
Yeah. Oh, was it? Was it the same?
I think so.
I wasn't impressed with My Blue Heaven. Watching it again, I remember enjoying it very much as a kid. But I think their portrayal of mobster life was a lot more honorable than What About Bob's portrayal of psychopathy.
All right. So would you like to rest your case there, Lou?
Oh yeah, sure. I got to get the fuck out of here.
All right. The prosecution has rest. Mr. Ryan Luis Rodriguez, you may proceed with your case.
My first argument is that the film strikes an interesting tone, in that Bob is a man with practically every form of psychosomatic mental illness. As the prosecution has mentioned, he's agoraphobic, he's a hypochondriac, and he demonstrates both obsessive-compulsive disorder and anal retentiveness. But I don't get the impression that the film is ever laughing at him, which I appreciate, and the same goes for Murray's portrayal. There is inherent humor in this character who can't seemingly function in any part of adult life, but it's not in a mean-spirited way or in a way that casts aspersions on people who struggle with some of these issues in real life, like myself. But the same goes for Dreyfuss's character, a self-aggrandizing narcissist who treats his patients in a very transitory fashion, more concerned with his image than with keeping his patients' well-being at the forefront. The film communicates this without being anti-psychiatry. Where the tone succeeds is how it plays these two personalities off of one another without ever making either the villain of the piece. Bob wants to belong and isn't going out of his way to make Leo miserable, but there also isn't anything that he could possibly do to make Leo like or even tolerate him, and Leo's hatred of him feels believable without tipping all the way into utter farce.
All right, Mr. Perez, would you like to respond to that relationship that Mr. Rodriguez just outlined?
Absolutely not.
All right, Mr. Rodriguez, please proceed.
Like the record to note that, just to be safe.
So noted.
What About Bob's greatest success lies in how it weaponizes what I call the Murray mystique. How the actor seems to appeal to literally everyone in the audience despite seemingly only playing sociopaths. Typically, when he clashes with another character, we gravitate towards him because his opposition represents authority. But here, his opponent in every scene is simply trying to enjoy a vacation with his family, only to grow excessively resentful when a complete hapless schmo hijacks his one opportunity to enjoy a moment of rest and relaxation, and earns the esteem of his family despite boasting no exceptional qualities of any kind. Bob is everything that Leo despises, someone who fails into a sense of admiration without doing his due diligence. For the first time, the audience is asked to watch a Bill Murray performance and accept what we tend to reject automatically, that maybe the other side has a point, that maybe he doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt, without making him an arch-villain twirling his mustache. There are no heroes or villains here, just two people on either side of a gulf. Neither is entirely right, and neither is entirely wrong. This isn't single white female. Bob is not hijacking his family on purpose. It's just how events shake out. You keep expecting a scene that reveals that this was all part of Bob's plan all along, to supplant Leo's role as patriarch, but it never comes, and that's remarkable. There's a surprising depth of characterization for what could just be a paint-by-numbers, insubstantial lark.
All right, if you'd like to continue, Mr. Rodriguez.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay, take your time.
Wait, there's more?
There's one more point.
How many more references to 90s movies are we making?
As many as you've got.
I got
two
two
with
coming
Ryan,
up.
it could be a bunch, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So my last point is that What About Bob does not get enough credit for its clever mashup of several genres, some of which it may have actually even pioneered. It wasn't until the early 2000s that's what is commonly known today as cringe comedy began to emerge, when the conflict is entirely based around awkward interpersonal relationships, and the audience is meant to identify with the character through an unbearable gauntlet of aggressions, both massive and micro. It takes this genre that doesn't exist yet and filters it through the prism of a psychological horror movie. If you were to add a couple murders committed by either character, and that is Dick Dreyfuss or Willie Murray, this easily becomes an exercise in dread on the level of a Hereditary or The Lodge. But as is, it builds to a crescendo with personal and emotional stakes. If Dreyfuss does go through with blowing up Bob in the third act, the audience has been primed to be thoroughly annoyed with Bob, so we're not fearful for his life, but we are fearful for Leo's sanity, for his moral compass. After all, he's been making himself out to be an emotional savior with a probably hacky instruction manual for the psyche, but he's not exploitive. Murder would be a point of no return for him. He could conceivably get away with murder and no one would be the wiser, but he would emerge from the experience a changed person, irrevocably affected.
All right. And Mr. Perez, would you like to respond to whether or not Richard Dreyfuss murdering Bob would have affected him or anything to that effect?
Well, I would like to say that compared to What About Bob, single white female was hilarious.
I remember laughing.
Order. All right. So I said, what about Robb? And here we are. All right. So, Mr. Rodriguez, so you're going to rest there?
I am going to rest, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Both sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Perez, you may begin.
Oh my God. What else can be said that hasn't been said and felt? Yeah, look, I think we're getting into some interesting territory here where there are so few laughs in What About Bob, this supposed comedy, that we need to delve in and give a close reading as if it's midnight on a Tuesday night and we have a paper due tomorrow. So we're going to do all we can to spit out a 1,000-word essay to get it in on time because we need at least a B- to get through the semester. And I feel like that's what's going on here. I'll tell you what, the defense is a noble defenseman. He's not like one of those penny loafer guys. Unfortunately, his great skills, his passion have been wasted on a piece of fucking garbage. What About Bob doesn't deserve the love, the treatment, the respect that Ryan Luis Rodriguez has given to it. The prosecution rests.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rodriguez, your closing statement, please.
Before I do, I would like to remind the prosecution that he has no idea what kind of shoes I wear. Thank you. We all know that What About Bob is innocent of the charges leveled against it this evening. Even if you're like my distinguished opponent and don't enjoy the film, the numbers simply don't add up to a guilty verdict. There is simply too much about it that is effective in the right ways, whether it's the unique blend of emotional dynamics or the range and depth of the performances of all involved. It leverages and weaponizes Bill Murray's own persona in a way that at times feels genuinely transgressive. It manages to straddle the line between cringe comedy and psychological horror film. But most importantly, and I want to stress this as vehemently as I possibly can, no movie with Julie Haggerty is guilty of a goddamn thing except being great at casting. If you want to convict a movie for being great at anything, especially casting, so be it. It's out of my hands. It is what it is. You shall be judged by our cosmic overseers accordingly. Don't do this for my sake. Do it for yours, and your children's adopted children. Case dismissed.
No, dismissed? No. Order.
Objection, Your Honor. He's not allowed to dismiss this case.
No, that's true. He pulls that every trial. It only worked once. All right. Members of the jury, Mr. Robb Maynard, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, and Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, you have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right this way. I thought one of you was supposed to be named Pavlov. Does the name Pavlov ring a bell with any of you?
Oh, God. We need a new bailiff. Yeah, no.
I like
Robo bailiff. Let's go and get a robot.
All right, guys. An important case to me personally here. Yeah, I mean, it's no secret What About Bob is one of my favorite movies. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's good, though. So I am here to entertain both sides. But first, I want to get your impressions. Ben, what did you think of the arguments?
Well, I feel for Lou Perez because I too once watched a comedy movie that people loved and I just could not squeeze a laugh out of it. And that was like Zach and Dave or whatever need wedding dates. So I know exactly what it's like to have a comedy that people rave about. And I don't get it. It's just the same joke again and again. How funny do you people think this is?
Is that how
was
you
not the
felt
case
about?
for me.
Oh, that okay.
No, it wasn't the case for me with What About Bob. I did get the humor. I liked that Bill Murray wasn't the same guy that he was in Ghostbusters, and it's like one of a handful of times beyond Ghostbusters and like Groundhog Day where actually, I thought he was funny. And Richard Dreyfuss, though, he is the star of this show. I love this guy's subtle humor where he's just very calm and collected at the beginning and just lets this guy just chip away at his armor just ever so slowly until he's just erupting at the end of it. He does it with such skill and precision. I just loved that guy's performance to death.
Dreyfuss's facial expressions in this movie, to me, yeah, they're the centerpiece. Like the way his face will just drop at reactions to things Bob does, just him in the background, just reacting to everyone else reacting to him, is definitely something.
Yeah, it's not
special.
even in the script. It's just him, like, knowing how to act in that moment. It's just fantastic. And I like the joke about, like, this guy having this huge tome of what to do, and it's really just this really simple, dead simple concept. That, I think, is great for a commentary on, like, pop psychology as a whole, and how, like, at the end, Bob is, like, oh, I'm tying myself up. And there's that one realization, like, makes all of his neuroses just completely evaporate. Again, really great commentary on what people have done for the like con man routine of the pop psychologist.
And I'll pass this question to Dylan. Dylan, what do you think? Is this a criticism of psychology on the whole, or a certain sect of psychology?
I do like that. That's where some of the argumentation went. I'm glad Lou brought that up. I'm glad Ryan addressed it as well. And having listened to it, and having been in therapy myself, I could see kind of being a bit reflexive to how it's like kind of a harsh criticism. But if you start drilling down and you're looking at the kind of guy Richard Dreyfuss is, I think it's more of a criticism of that kind of that high level huckster that we see, and it's not just in pop psychology like this. I mean, you see it in like in personal finance as well. I mean, like any field, you kind of get these self-aggrandized important types. Like, I've got a book to sell you that's going to help you with X, Y, or Z. So it's probably more of a criticism on that than the actual idea behind psychotherapy and that nature. So I think while it is a criticism on it, I think it's very highly tailored in a way that's not, as Ryan said, it's not laughing at people who have legitimate issues like Bill Murray, and it's not even saying that guys like Richard Dreyfuss in and of themselves are bad for even existing, but it kind of shows how attenuated their lives could get if you keep pushing them, which I thought was pretty interesting.
I mean, I would say we don't know. I don't think the movie provides an answer about whether the problem is with psychotherapy or psychiatry as a whole. For sure, it is criticizing Richard Dreyfuss's methods, but I think it also paints Dreyfuss as a bit of a charlatan. And I think it's absolutely criticizing that kind of charlatan role. I
think charlatan is too strong a term.
I don't.
I think the book had some merits. It obviously was selling.
I don't think it did.
Well, and
that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't. Mean
no. But and I think some of the criticism that comes with the is when Bill Murray's the laundry list of other doctors that he had seen. I mean, that's how he ends up seeing Richard Dreyfuss, because a doctor refers to him just to get him off his hands. This idea that you can have impossible clients with impossible problems, and he lists like 12 doctors that he saw while Richard Dreyfuss is tying him up. So that could also be pointed to a failure in the actual practice, and not just a failure of Richard Dreyfuss.
That's a good point.
I've been known to make them from time to time.
Occasionally. What did you think about the humor? I mean, Ben, you said you laughed, so.
I did. I understand that's subjective, though, so I don't want to weigh that too heavily.
No, but I mean, with subjectiveness, we can.
Whoa! The Speedway just was built next to the courthouse.
That was my car. I'm sorry, guys. But did I interrupt something?
Now I have to potentially leave that in, you dicks.
Oh, you totally leave it in.
But I've totally lost my train of thought. Curse you, Honda.
You're welcome.
To me, obviously, I do like the humor, but I think a lot of the humor in it stems from, again, Richard Dreyfuss's reactions to the situation. Obviously, Ryan defended the film as a comedy, and I think that lets the other characters off the hook a bit. Like, because Lou's absolutely right. Letting a 40-something-year-old man stay in the bedroom with your 9-year-old son's insane. And if this was anything but a comedy, it wouldn't work. And, the question is, why did the family instantly gravitate to Bob so quickly? And I think Ryan gave a great point about that.
And I think a lot of it is because it's Bill Murray. You feel like you're watching Bill Murray. I think if you just had some character actor who was doing that, it reads as creepy no matter how funny and charming he's being. But you think, Bill, you're saying Bill Murray's not going to hurt a kid. He's not going to hurt these people because it's Bill Murray. So I think that was a point Ryan was able that carried a lot of weight for me. Is they really were able to utilize Bill Murray to his fullest. Actually, Robin Williams was planned for the Bill Murray role, and I think he would have had the same effect with Robin Williams. We would have seen Robin Williams with a kid. It's nothing wrong, But if you got I don't know, Brian Dennehy or something. I don't know. It's just to throw something out.
That's a remake I want to see.
What about Brian Dennehy?
Yeah, that movie becomes very creepy because Brian Dennehy's huge and he could mess you up. Even
he's also dead.
Yeah, also dead. Rest in peace.
That would be even worse. But yeah, I think the fact that it's a comedy kind of lets those characters off the hook for doing something that I think Ryan used the word farce. It is farcical. It's not something that someone would realistically do. And that's kind of where the humor comes from. Because at the same time, you're kind of slapping your head and what are you doing letting him stay?
And then at the same time, though, if you're slapping your head enough, that starts to hurt, So I
was totally wondering, you guys have couches. Point. I see a couch right there. Why can't he sleep on the couch?
I think one of the reasons they didn't want to have him sleep on the couch was so that Good Morning America wouldn't walk in and see him. I think they mentioned that line.
Oh, that would have been a good scene, though.
That might have been.
I mean, it's basically what happens in it. You think he's gone? He's right there. That was the funniest part of the movie for me, right there.
Yeah. So I thought there were definitely some good points. And as Lou said, I mean, this I don't think is a very great representation of psychotherapy or psychotherapists. But I'm not sure that it is beholden to be all that accurate since it's a comedy, and really going more for the laughs. But I think Ryan is also
No, I
right.
think it's just like the book you see at Barnes & Noble, the big self-help book. That's what it's going after, not the whole psychology in general.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I'll go on record, and obviously everyone knows that I like this movie a whole ton. But I do want to give Luke credit for bringing the points that he did, and they were very personal to him. So I know that he still dislikes the movie, but I'm gonna have to go not guilty for sure.
And I'll weigh in too. I gotta say, because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny, and I was curious to see what the prosecution would bring to it. And I'm glad they focused on that commentary because I think that is important. I think we don't want to quite lose sight of it, but at the same time, it's Bill Murray, it's Richard Dreyfuss. It is a lot of fun, and I was laughing too much at the end of the day. So I'm going not guilty and thankful that we had such a great case.
I'm with you too. I agree. It's not a fantastic movie. And I do like the points that Lou Perez brought up in that regard. I didn't even really think about the creepiness of Bill Murray sleeping with the kid until after the film. And that sort of getting your brain back. Yeah, I know, but still, that sort of does bring it down a peg. So it's not top tier Bill Murray. So I acknowledge those points, but it is a not guilty film.
All right, let's get out there and tell that a very handsome judge.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus What About Bob, we find the accused not guilty of being a bad movie.
All right. The verdict is so rendered, and as such, I hereby order What About Bob free to go, and it should take a nice vacation from its problems and this court. Court is adjourned.
This is young Frankenstein reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice. Mr. Lou Perez, would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict?
That accent's terrible.
Yeah,
Because I'm making it up as I go along.
God.
I think what we saw here was an utter travesty. I think it's obvious. I'm gonna go out on the limb and say that I bet that quite a few people, members of the jury, were fans of What About Bob before going into this. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that it's totally disgusting, and cities will burn. Cities will burn. If you thought the 2020 riots were something, you have no idea what's going to happen, and it's all in your heads because you were scared to do the right thing.
I know they screens those three people very heavily. And here comes Ryan Luis Rodriguez. Excuse me, can we get a thought on your verdict today?
Yeah, so where are you from, sir?
Yeah.
The planet Zigazars.
Yeah.
And which paper do you work for?
None of your business, shut up!
It figures that I would win finally for a movie I didn't even like, so thanks, everybody.
Classic Ryan. Classic Ryan.
And let me pull this mask off. It was me, Ben, all along. Let's go back to the courthouse. Or back to the
That was
first trial
you?
analysis.
That's crazy.
I thought it was Johnny Manicotti.
Oh boy, I always feel bad about some of the accents we do, but that one.
I know, I knew it the second it came out of my
issue
mouth,
was that
but
it was
you know.
3 different accents at the same time.
Yeah, but not
That's
like
hard to do, man.
not
It's hard
like
to do.
not like switching one into another, 3 at the same time simultaneously.
You do it.
It's like a digital aggregate of a accent.
I only have one tongue. I can't do that. Yeah, but no, I mean, Lou hit it right. Yeah, no, I shouldn't have been on the jury in this one. Ryan, why'd you tell me you didn't like the movie? I love this movie.
You can still love it. It's fine.
I do, whether you dislike it or not. You made me like it more, actually. You had some excellent points as to
that
Lou.
wasn't my intent.
It was like Tusk all over again.
But I never thought it was trying to be too like a fair portrayal of psychology. It certainly is taking some digs at it and stuff. But at the same time, I also don't think I don't know if Bill Murray's really crazy in this movie or not. Like, because if he was, he couldn't get quote unquote cured as easily as he does. I think he's faking it most of the time for attention. I don't think he's aware he's faking it, but I don't think he actually has all these things.
He has a whole new psychosis that none of us know about, where he's faking multiple psychoses.
He's just a really, really, really lonely guy.
It's psychosomatic. Yeah. It's all in his head.
Yeah.
Like, literally all in his head.
Yeah, exactly. Because he can turn it all off when he needs to in like a second. But cool trial and great verdict. So, Lou, what has been keeping you busy lately? What have you been working on?
Yeah, so for one, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate that, and thank you for not telling me to prepare. So I really
that's Dylan's fault. That's Dylan's fault.
That was great. I didn't even see this movie. No, I definitely.
Me neither.
I feel terrible now.
So in between my viewings of What About Bob and now I have a podcast, the Lou Perez podcast. I've also been producing sketch comedy, so I have a few new videos in the can that people can check out on YouTube eventually. And last week I actually signed a contract for a book, so I'm gonna be writing a book. That's
hey, all right,
congratulations.
Baby steps too.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. Fetal steps. I think that's what.
Hey, if you need a blurb, this podcast we've been blurbed on the back of books before, so we'd love to help you out.
Well,
yeah,
it's going to be
blurred by
really
the only host of this show, right?
When I have to defend my book. And then Ryan completely kicks my ass and persuades me that the book I wrote is really just shit. Yeah.
I'm going to persuade you that you didn't actually write a book, that it was all in your head.
Exactly. We might get there. Yeah, we might get to that point.
Ryan's a dream crusher like that, I can tell you. For sure.
So can you talk a little bit about like what's it going to be about or anything, or is it still kind of hush hush?
It's not so hush hush. I think it's going to be about what it's like to be producing comedy, nowadays, especially after say like the last 10 years or so. What it's been like with technology, with the changing cultures and norms and that sort of thing. I just realized that I didn't sell that book very well.
You should have a whole chapter on What About Bob?
Oh my God, it'd be such a painful chapter.
You have to watch it a fourth time though, and that's
9-year-old you would love it. So we always ask our guests to recommend a movie that you think our listeners should check out. So what is a movie that you think our listeners should check out?
Yeah, so this is a movie. I think it came out originally like in 2018, and it's called American Animals. Have you guys heard of it?
Ryan,
no.
Heard
Ryan
of it,
has.
haven't seen it. Heard of it though.
It's fantastic. It's based on a real life story about a group of college kids who try to pull off a heist at their college library. So they try to steal a number of really expensive books from their library, and it's a really interesting hybrid of interviews and reenactments, and it's phenomenal. It's so well done. I think the guy who directed the movie. There was a movie about a young boy went missing in the United States, and then years later, the family got a call from Spain. It said that your son has been found in Spain, and the person went back home, and the son suddenly had like a Spanish accent. And it was The Imposter. That's what it was called. So I think the same filmmaker who made The Imposter made American Animals, and it was one of those movies where I'm like, I can't believe I've never heard of this movie. It was so well done. So I highly recommend it.
Awesome.
Well, Bart Layton. I think it looks
Yeah, Bart Layton is the director of The Imposter and American Animals.
There you go.
Cool.
No, that's definitely yes, that's exactly what Wikipedia confirms. All right, great. Ryan, you get a recommendation. So what do you got for us?
I get a recommendation this week?
Yes,
That's
as
nice.
a gift. As a
Okay.
gift.
Just
You were
one.
such a good boy this week.
I
Just
couldn't think
one.
of... Shut up, Dylan. I couldn't think of anything to tie into this week's case, and I'll be damned if I pick something with Bill Murray in it. So instead, I will recommend a film that I watched a couple days ago. It's called Journey to the Beginning of Time from 1955. It's a Karel Zeman movie. It was a Czechoslovakian special effects epic that combines innovative stop-motion effects with a glorious knack for composition. And it reminded me a lot of Wes Anderson's animated films, which I then looked up, and it turns out he's a fan, and it makes perfect sense. It's currently streaming on the Criterion channel.
And you watched the Czechoslovakian one, right? Not the American recut.
Yes, that is true. Mm-hmm. That is what I do.
And which everyone should do. Watch the original one. Don't watch the recut. I watched that this year too. So twinsies.
Good movie. Did you watch Invention for Destruction too?
I didn't. No.
That's
Not
really
twinsies.
Good
too. They're separated twinsies.
Dylan, you were our judge. So what do you got for us?
All right. This is a movie I've talked about on the podcast before, and I'm going to have to ask superfan Bounce and Bobby Lapierre to message me if I've recommended it before, but I'm recommending it again. It's going to be Ordinary People from 1980, directed by Robert Redford. And I'm recommending it this week because we were talking about the kind of negative portrayal of like therapists in What About Bob? But this one actually has a very good portrayal of therapy as exemplified by Judd Hirsch working with the main character in it. And it's just such a great movie. I mean, you got Donald Sutherland, Mary Tyler Moore. It's about people, and it's really, really good, and everyone should just watch it.
Yeah. It's like ordinary or something, those people.
Yeah, I know. And it's a movie that just sticks with you. I think I said that last week, too. I only remember movies that stick with me. Everyone who knows me knows my memory
Isn't
is
that
awful,
the definition of sticking with you?
I
And
suppose
remembering?
so.
Very good.
Why do I do this sometimes?
I don't know. Hopefully you haven't recommended that before. Big Ben, what do you got?
I'm going obvious, and it's one of my absolute favorite movies dealing with psychology, and it's M. Night Shyamalan's Return to Form, Split.
twist.
Being a fan of his earlier films like The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, this is very much a return to the form of the brilliance of those earlier films. James McAvoy is living the actor's dream with this role where he gets to play multiple personalities, and he absolutely nails it. Should have gotten an Oscar, or at least have been nominated. Jung Frankenstein out.
Oh, God.
No, good choice. But you're not recommending Glass, huh?
No, I did not like Glass.
Yeah, no, you're not the only one.
I think it's a Glasterpiece.
There he goes. So I'll send us on.
Get out of here, Ryan.
Speaking of unhealthy doctor-patient relationships, my recommendation is a film that features the unhealthiest one of all, and that's Dr. Samuel Loomis and masked mass murderer Michael Myers. If you think Bob and Marvin are bad, Dr. Loomis repeatedly shoots Michael. Michael retaliates by stabbing him several times, and throughout the course of many movies, each one refuses to die before the other. Most specifically, I'm going to recommend Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers from 1988, because Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance, takes on a more prominent role in that one as Laurie Strode is killed off in between films. As the title suggests, Michael Myers returns, and this time he's pursuing his young niece, Jamie, wink, and it's up to Dr. Loomis and a gaggle of drunken, heavily armed rednecks to stop him. I think this is an unfairly maligned entry. It is yes, that's what a group of drunken, heavily armed rednecks is called. They are a gaggle. So I think this is an unfairly maligned entry to the series, especially because it features a pretty awesome twist ending. And if you plan on doing a Halloween watch through this year, I urge you not to skip this one based on its unfavorable reviews. It's streaming right now on Amazon Prime.
I bet the twist is that he dies at the end. Because they
not
never
much of a
made
twist.
another Halloween movie ever again.
Ever again. It never happened. But no, great show, and we're all at a show for this week. But we do want to thank our guest, Lou Perez, for joining us. Thank you so much, Lou.
Thank you, guys. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'd like to have you back next time, and now you'll know what you're getting into.
We just don't like asking our guests to do homework. I think
it is a hard.
Blame myself.
It's a hard conversation to broach, right? It's like,
by the way, if you want to do like an hour of work, maybe have 4 pages of notes.
Yeah, if you don't mind. But we do hope to have you back very soon, and we hope everyone else will join us again too, as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Count it.
Bye!
Jinxies, you got to buy me a Coke.
What? Who? No.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.